Welcome to our College of Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. Indy Achieves is Mayor Joe Hogsett's response to Indianapolis's rapidly changing labor market by ensuring that every Indianapolis resident has the ability to pursue and complete a postsecondary credential or degree program, and empowering residents to pursue careers that put them on a pathway to the middle class. Indy Achieves will focus on two key ways to increase the proportion of adults with the appropriate credentials. The first is increasing the number of K-12 students who pursue and complete post-secondary credentials, and the second is increasing the educational attainment level of the existing adult population, all the while ensuring more intentional pathways into high-demand careers. I have 5 experts on Indy Achieve and Ivy Tech's participation in this important project with me on today's episode. Let's meet them. First up is Matt Impink. Hi, Matt.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Matt Impink. I'm the executive director of Indy Achieves. I'm an Indianapolis native. Grew up here in the city. My wife and I live in Fletcher Place on the southeast side of Indianapolis with our 3 daughters and our dog. And I started out my career as a high school history teacher and really got the bug for diving into education issues. So I've been working in public policy and in direct kind of community development for a little while in a number of different capacities. And so Indy Achieves is a really, really awesome opportunity for me personally. And I'm really excited to really dig into the big challenge that Mayor Hogsett has for us with this initiative.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. It's great to meet you, and I hope we get to meet in person someday. But until then, thank you for being on the episode. Next up is Caitlin Diehl. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Glad for you to be here. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So I actually have the interesting role. I am employed full-time with Indy Achieves, but I'm actually located full-time on Ivy Tech's campus. So I work part-time for Ivy Tech, but I'm located there full-time. I am the student success coach for Indy Achieves Promise Scholarship students.
Excellent. And I hope we dig a little bit more into that part of the program later today. So we'll look forward to hearing from you on that. And next up is Scott Rafalski. Hi, Scott.
Hi there.
How are you?
I am doing great. How are you today?
I'm good. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I've worked at Ivy Tech now for 8+ years, all within the student success department. Since Indy Achieves has come on board and we've been working with them, I've spent probably about the last year working on the completion grant side of things with them.
Excellent. Very good. Thanks for joining us today, Scott. And next up is Elizabeth Swisher. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Kara. Nice to be here today.
Thank you for joining. And tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Elizabeth Swisher Flood. I work in the Student Success Center along with Scott and Jessica and Caitlin. And I'm one of the success coaches for the Indy Achieves Completion Grant Program. And I came on board this past spring semester with the program.
Excellent. And how long have you been with the college? Because you've been with the college for quite a while, haven't you?
I have, yes. I have worked in the Student Success Center for about 6.5 years now.
Okay. I knew our paths had crossed more times than just in the last year. So great.
Sure.
It's great to have you on the episode. Thank you for joining. And last but not least is Jessica Solow. Hi, Jessica.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. And tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure. So I work in the Student Success Center. My title is the Assistant Director of Student Success and Retention. I've been with the college for about 6.5 years, almost 7, I think, at this point. And I currently work as the student success coach with the Indy Achieves program.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thanks to all of you. And we've got a ton of ground to cover today. So we're going to dive straight into the questions. In the intro, I read a little bit about the Indy Achieves program, which is mostly from the website. And we'll make sure we put the website for Indy Achieves in our show notes today. But I'd like you to help us go deeper into a few questions. So the first one is, how did Indy Achieves get started?
Indy Achieves is really a result of kind of a clarion call from Mayor Hogsett in his 2017 State of the City address. He basically just said, we need to have a promise initiative that really tackles the challenges around post-secondary attainment in Marion County, Indianapolis. And so he put together a task force with leaders in K-12, higher ed, community development, philanthropy, to decide kind of how, as a city, we would tackle this big challenge. And so in my previous role, I got a chance to actually serve a bit on that task force and was really remarkably impressed by what product they came up with as this policy challenge for the city to take on. With that progress, with that task force report, I was really flattered to be asked to be the first executive director. And what we really wanted to do was not just have kind of a specialty scholarship program for select students. We wanted to really put Indy Achieves in the context of trying to solve these big kind of community challenges around how we meet the demand of the economy today. And what we're seeing is that, starting this year, 62% of jobs in Indianapolis are requiring at least some sort of post-secondary education, whether that's, an industry recognized credential, whether it's, high quality credentials that are typical at places like Ivy Tech, but also associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees as well. So this is really, really important to meet the demand of what we're seeing from employers. And as we track data at EmployIndy where we're housed, we're constantly seeing the need for educated workers for the jobs that are available right now today. And it's a big reason why we are not just, a higher education initiative, but we're also squarely positioned as part of the workforce development system of the city.
Excellent. Thank you. So, and Matt, you started to touch on this, but let's go a little bit more into who does Indy Achieves serve?
The way we look at it is we focus on access, completion, and career. So we look at it in a very comprehensive way. So we are actually engaging with students as young as 7th and 8th graders in Marion County middle schools to make sure that they sign up for 21st Century Scholars, which is really one of those very, very crucial key decision points along the way for students. If you are a free and reduced lunch student, as between 60 to 70% of our Marion County students are, you are eligible to get a full tuition college scholarship, but you have to enroll by the end of your 8th grade year. So we're really taking on a pretty big outreach campaign to make sure students and families are hitting that June 30th deadline. And so if you have a 7th or 8th grader in your household, make sure you are enrolling them in 21st Century Scholars before the June 30th deadline. We're working with a lot of high school students along the way as well, especially once they hit 12th grade, to make sure that they are, one, getting their FAFSA filled out so that they can actually qualify for Indy Achieves, for state aid, for federal aid. But we actually have a mentorship program for any student interested in Ivy Tech or IUPUI. And for Ivy Tech, we're sending them very specific text messages on a weekly basis, reminded them of all the tasks and deadlines that they have as an incoming student to make sure that they don't get behind and they can get all of the aid that they're entitled to, that they get their acuplacers done sooner rather than later so that they can get placed in the proper course, that they can get their ideal schedule so that they can also potentially work a job and go to school in the most convenient fashion. So we're really trying to focus on a lot of these kind of transition points along the way for students. And then obviously when they arrive at Ivy Tech, engaging them through our Scholar Success Program, our Student Success Program that Caitlin Diehl will talk about, but also getting students connected to career opportunities once they graduate. The other kind of key entry point for Indy Achieves for students is that we're oftentimes reaching out to students who have gone to Ivy Tech before, but it's stopped out for any number of reasons, whether it be financial, whether it be academic or otherwise, and saying, hey, if you want to re-engage, if you want to continue your education, oftentimes, the students have unpaid debts to Ivy Tech that are preventing them from re-enrolling. And what we say is, hey, we don't want that financial barrier to be the reason you're not re-enrolling at Ivy Tech and completing. So we're providing completion grants, not only for current students that have need, but also students that want to re-engage as Ivy Tech students who had previously, stopped their progress. And that's where the partnership with Elizabeth, Scott, and Jessica really come in, because they are really the key folks at making sure those students have all the support that they need. Coming back to school can be a unique challenge. You've got new challenges personally that you may not have had the first time you went to school. And making sure that you are really being very efficient with what your goals are when you go to Ivy Tech your career goals may have changed. You may need to get creative in how you arrange your schedule. So there's a lot of unique challenges there that really necessitate the good work that the coaches do to make sure we're meeting the needs of individual students and helping them along the way to success. So there's a lot of different ways we engage, a lot of different entry points, and we really want to be very comprehensive in partnership with Ivy Tech to make sure we are seeing where those key transition points are and providing a pretty targeted way to support those students through those transitions.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you for that. And that is you framed up really well, diving into my next question, which is, how is Ivy Tech involved in Indy Achieves? So Caitlin, if I can start with you, because it sort of sounds like you're in two different teams. So we'll have you go first, and then we'll have Jessica and Scott and Elizabeth talk about how they're connected. So Caitlin, we'll have you start.
Sure, definitely. So like I had said before, I am on both sides, full-time with Indy Achieves at EmployIndy, but it definitely feels more so like full-time at Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech students, to qualify for the Promise Scholarship with Indy Achieves, have to be Marion County residents. They have to receive some sort of Pell Grant, and they also have to apply for their FAFSA each time every year on time. And so this year, as of the spring semester, I had a cohort of 240 students that I, fortunately, through a text platform with Indy Achieves, was able to do outreach to via text. And that definitely was a really effective way to reach a large amount of students and be able to assist them with reminders of how to schedule classes, what they need to do for applying for their FAFSA, how to connect them with different resources on campus, and even just send encouragement to the students, especially right now with the unprecedented times of COVID-19, talking with them about how to apply for unemployment, and if they have family members, how they can help their family members apply for that unemployment. So really trying to be as holistic as possible to support these students and make sure that they can get the career they want in a time frame that is manageable and equal to the rest of the population.
That is exceptional. Thank you so much, Caitlin. And I want to make sure we're clear that you do straddle both worlds, because you are a dual employee, you're an Ivy Tech employee and an Indy Achieves employee. And I think that's really a unique part of this partnership that is really important to its success, is how deeply intertwined the two organizations are. So that's wonderful. So let's turn over to Jessica and Scott and Elizabeth, and let's talk a little bit about the students that you serve and how Ivy Tech is involved with Indy Achieves through the student population with which you work.
So I can start with that. There's actually three of us, Elizabeth, Scott, and I, that are the coaches for the Indy Achieves student cohort at Ivy Tech. So there are some things that we do to engage with our students. We do one coaching appointment each semester with them that they're receiving the scholarship. And we also engage with them via phone and email just to make sure that things are going well for them. I think it is important also to mention that there are some requirements that students at Ivy Tech do have to meet to be involved with the Indy Achieves opportunity. They do have to be in good standing, which means a 2.0 GPA and a 67% completion rate. They need to be in a degree-seeking program, which means they can't be courses only or undecided or general studies. And they do need to complete coaching requirements and also complete a financial literacy course to make sure that they understand budgeting and things like that. So there are a lot of ways that we do engage with our group.
And just to tag on to that, so to qualify for a completion grant, students do need to be at least halfway through their declared program. The intention of the completion grant is really to assist students with overcoming a particular financial barrier that they may be experiencing on the pathway to completing their degree. And so Matt had mentioned earlier that it can help to cover a prior balance owed to the college. So that is a very good opportunity for students who may have stopped out due to that prior balance. This can help them get re-engaged and continue their education. And also for students who are very close to completing the degree but may have run out of funding, this is also a good opportunity for students to get the assistance that they need to be able to finish their credential.
And I would also add, Elizabeth, that with students who are almost nearing the end of their degree, we are seeing that students who are terminated for max time frame, they also do qualify under the Indy Achieves cohort grant. So that's really important for our students because there might be an opportunity to help them towards that finish line and then provide them extra support through coaching to ensure that they do complete their degree.
And just a couple other things. So it's a last dollar scholarship or grant also. So if a student is already getting full Pell Grant or other assistance that's providing them with full support for college, that's really not who we're targeting or looking at. So that's one thing. Another nice thing about Indy Achieves has been that another group, that's not necessarily a huge group, but a large group, but we've been able to assist and help DACA students also that have qualified for this. So there's been specific little things like that that we've been able to target and really make an impact, that those are students that could really use the assistance and help. So those dollars have gone a long way in assisting and helping them.
That's outstanding. Thanks to all of you for explaining that. One of the reasons I love doing the podcast is I get to learn more about programs that I hear about, but I don't know in depth. And so you guys have helped me to understand this better. We've mentioned IUPUI a couple of times, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about who else partners in Indy Achieves, because I know it takes the whole community to solve this problem. So who else is involved with Indy Achieves?
So I mentioned before that Indy Achieves is actually an initiative, a program of EmployIndy. So both Caitlin and I are actual EmployIndy employees. And what that means is that we're part of the overall workforce development system for Marion County. So it's actually like a federal designation. When the Workforce and Innovation Opportunity Act at the federal level, when those dollars get spent, we are the local partner to help make that happen for things like Work One, to help people re-engage in careers. But we also run programs like JAG, Jobs for America's Graduates. We also run things like the Indy Rec, the Re-Engagement Center, to help opportunity youth get re-engaged either with school or employment opportunities. So there's a lot of different things we do under the umbrella of EmployIndy. We're really proud to be part of that. We also work really closely with the Commission for Higher Education at the state level. They are really the administrators for the 21st Century Scholar Program. But we really identify students based on their eligibility for financial aid. So typically at the state level, you're talking about things like 21st Century Scholars, Frank O'Bannon, adult student grants, workforce ready grants, and a few others. But really making sure that we are kind of in alignment with the kind of state aid programs that are available through the commission becomes really important. That we understand all the details about satisfactory academic progress. We're trying to find key ways to intervene in a helpful way for students along, with some of these requirements that they have. The coaches are obviously really tuned into those requirements that students have and helping them along the way. Us having a pretty good line into the commission employees is really important to help get a lot of questions answered. If there are things like COVID-19, for instance, there were waivers that were announced for students, and navigating the ins and outs of that became really important for us, and having that strong relationship with the commission was really important. We also, are very strongly linked with the city of Indianapolis and specifically the mayor's office. So we end up spending a lot of time really trying to coordinate with other kind of city initiatives. So we were really thankful to get support from the Bond Bank of Indianapolis that provides some financial support for us that's actually enabling us to expand our coaching capacity, which is really important. So those are a few partnerships to name a few. We were very lucky to have the support of Lumina Foundation for Education that provided a startup grant for us to really launch the coaching program with Ivy Tech and IUPUI. The partnership that you talked about that is really important is also with IUPUI itself. And we're obviously focused on Ivy Tech today, but a lot of students at Ivy Tech want to go on and pursue a 4-year degree. And there are lots of places those students can do that. We really try to push students towards IUPUI, one, because it's a great school. I'm lucky to be an IUPUI alum myself, but we can really help with getting students all of their credits transferred properly through the transfer articulation agreements between the two schools. And also we can have a really nice handoff because we have a similar student success coaching program at IUPUI So students can really have a pretty seamless amount of support if they stay in Indy Achieves, going from Ivy Tech to IUPUI. So that becomes very, very important. One of the things that we're doing as we expand coaching capacity is actually looking forward to having our coach at IUPUI start to do some engagement with Promise Scholars at Ivy Tech that intend to transfer. So we're starting that relationship while they're still at Ivy Tech, and in partnership with things like the Passport Office that are helping students along the way already. So we're trying to really bolster some of those supports with that transition that a lot of students are expected to make between Ivy Tech and IUPUI. So a ton of partnerships, to name a few, and there's a ton more.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you so much. And we love all of our four-year partners. IUPUI is a wonderful transfer partner for us, and they are such a great institution. So really proud to have students transfer there as well as all of our four-year partners. So let's talk a little bit about how the success of Indy Achieves is measured. According to the website, to completely close the skills gap in Indianapolis, our city would need an additional 215,000 adults with a job-ready credential. And of course, that data is pre-COVID-19, so some things may be changing that you could fill us in on. Indy Achieves is committed to increasing the proportion of Indianapolis adults with high-quality postsecondary credentials to 65% of residents by 2027, and to eliminating attainment gaps that currently exist for minority residents. So talk to me a little bit about what the results are thus far.
The major outcome goal that you mentioned there, really increasing that overall attainment rate for Marion County is huge. And we look at the market demand projections and say, man, it really needs to be 65% of our population by 2027. That is a huge goal. That's a daunting goal. I think we are part of a large ecosystem working to hit that goal as a community. So what we're doing at Indy Achieves is really trying to focus on, again, that access, completion, and career connection piece. The early successes that we had is really, focusing on, one, trying to really help maximize financial aid for students. We've partnered with Ivy Tech and InvestEd in promoting FAFSA completion through College Goal Sunday and other measures. Also trying to really increase enrollment in 21st Century Scholars. So in the first year where we were really engaging in that campaign, we saw a 5% increase countywide in the 8th grade enrollment rate for 21st Century Scholars. So that's still a lot of work left to do there to get it where it ought to be. But 5% increase is good, and we work pretty hard to get that. At the campus level, we are really trying to increase completion rates for students. And the way we approach it is to say we want to really marry the financial supports that are in place for students with kind of the wraparound supports that come through the Student Success Coaching Program. And when you're looking at Promise Scholars in particular, the students that Diehl directly supports, we were really proud. We saw a pretty good increase in the cohort that Caitlin supports in their retention to the spring semester. So in fall 2019, over 77% of our scholars re-enrolled for spring 2020. And that was about a little less than an 8% increase higher than the overall first year cohort at Ivy Tech. So that really, a lot of stuff goes into that. That's really a combination of the support that comes from the coaches and the financial support that those students get. But that has some real meaningful impacts when you start getting those retention rates up and students are getting closer and closer to their degree. When you talk about the completion grant side, we provided in the fall 2019 semester 199 completion grants. And most of these students were actually students that had stopped out and wanted to come back to Ivy Tech, but needed a little bit of financial support to get over that hump, pay back their debt, and so that they can re-enroll and qualify for financial aid. What we saw is that 120 of those students either graduated or re-enrolled for the spring semester. So that's a success rate that we want to continue improving upon. But in our very first semester, we saw a lot of success with students getting re-engaged at Ivy Tech, and that's something I think we're really proud of. and something we want to continue building on in future semesters as we kind of get a full cohort of students that are being supported by the Indy Achieves services and the student success coaches at Ivy Tech.
Outstanding. I know what it takes to move 1 percentage point in retention, so it's exceptional what you have seen. That's wonderful. As you all have worked with the program, what has surprised you?
So one thing that I would say is, I don't know if this is necessarily a surprise, but something that I have found very interesting in working with the program is just the wide diversity of student stories that I've encountered. So through the students who are receiving a completion grant, having the opportunity to talk with them and learn about their background, their educational journeys, there's just so many different stories, so many different reasons why a student may have stopped attending previously and what their goals are now. And so that's something that I found very rewarding about the program.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that's really surprised me is, as we are now going through this pandemic and some very challenging times, and especially now working from home, was that one of the great things, like Matt had mentioned, those 199 students we worked with in fall for the completion grant side of things, Jessica and I worked with that group. So that's a large number of students that we coached and are still reaching out to us and asking us questions, and that we've built a relationship with. So they know us and they feel confident that they can get answers from us. And so they're being really honest and truthful what's going on in their world and their life. And, as the colleges tried to assist and help and have students tell their story and say, hey, if COVID has impacted you in this way or this way, we really need to document this. We've been able to provide the students with that information, say, these are students we needed to reach out to beyond just getting an email from the entire college, which is nice, but they got it specifically from us too, saying, hey, we worked with you in the past. What's going on if we didn't know? A lot of them, we already knew what was going on because they've stayed in contact and touch with us. But it's continuing that relationship too. And just no matter where they were at, we've been able to, like Matt said, engage them, but continue to engage them through all of this too. So it's good for them to have someone that they can talk to that's just not a general mailbox. They have our name, they have our information, and they've actually met with us and seen us before too, face to face. So I think that makes a huge difference too, that personal piece.
And I would say what surprised me the most has definitely come out this semester after sending so many texts to students. And I also have an Ivy Learn for the Indy Achieves Promise Scholarship students as well. After sending so many messages, you get used to who typically responds and those you've never heard from. But the biggest surprise for me is definitely when I haven't heard from a student at all before, kind of just thinking maybe this phone number isn't working, and they finally send me a message saying, hey, can you help me with this? So to know that the student, even though we aren't talking all the time or maybe have not spoken individually before together, it's amazing to see their trust and their willingness to reach out, even if we haven't met in person before.
We have talked a lot about different ways for folks to get involved. So as we sort of move into the last half of the episode, I want to just recap those. So if I live in the Marion County, Indianapolis area, and I want to get involved in Indy Achieves, and I'm a parent of a student or a student in elementary, middle school, high school, what should I know?
A lot of different messages for a lot of different audiences there for sure. If you are someone who is either wrapping up your high school education or you've graduated before and you're looking to go to Ivy Tech, one of the things I would recommend is sign up for our mentorship program. One, we give you all of the kind of basic information you need along the way to make sure that you are checking off all the boxes as you get ready to become a student at Ivy Tech. The good thing about Ivy Tech is they have the Express Enrollment Center that is an open door outside of pandemic situation that allows students to come in and really get all of their questions answered, get enrolled, sign up for AccuPlacer, fill out FAFSA if you need to. That is really great. And so, a combination of getting enrolled at Ivy Tech, signing up for the Indy Achieves mentorship program to help along the way and have a real mentor on the other end of the text messages to help answer your questions and guide you. That's one of the best ways to get engaged. If you are a middle school student or a parent of a middle school student, you can go to our website, indyachieves.org/21CS, and there's several different ways you can get enrolled in 21st Century Scholars. And you have to do that if you're an 8th grade student before June 30th. If you are a student who previously went to Ivy Tech and wants to get re-enrolled again, you can reach out directly to Ivy Tech. I would actually recommend you go to our website and actually request a completion grant there. We take those requests and share them with Ivy Tech to see if you qualify, and then we engage you in an enrollment workshop and help you each step along the way. So there's a lot of different ways to get engaged, a lot of resources on our website, a lot of helpful people at the Express Enrollment Center at Ivy Tech that can help guide you in the right direction.
Perfect. Thank you. And so if I'm a member of the Ivy Tech community, what should I know and how could I get involved?
If you're a member of the Ivy Tech community, I think first and foremost, it's important to just know Indy Achieves overall has 2 components to it, the Promise Scholarship and the Completion Grant. And knowing that knowledge, also knowing who to connect students with is very important. There are so many different offices at Ivy Tech and so many people who are wanting to help support students. So knowing that Indy Achieves is the last dollar grant and scholarship is really important. And we have a flyer available for faculty and staff that has the requirements of Indy Achieves, and that is always available to them if they would like to know how to refer students to speak with us, or even just to have a conversation with students about what Indy Achieves is about.
And just what Caitlin said, I would say what I'd like Ivy Tech people to know is not to be afraid to refer also. Just because a student doesn't necessarily qualify or meet all the requirements at that point in time doesn't mean they won't in a semester. It also, so get them on our radar. And our office, especially the Student Success Center, we work with a lot of different initiatives and money. Our Second Chance Scholarship had over $100,000 we were given this last school year to use. I know we're still trying to spend that for the summer. So even when, and I know this is about Indy Achieves, but even when we have students that don't necessarily at this point in time qualify for that, they could qualify for something else, another scholarship or other last dollars or money. I think in the 8+ years I worked at Ivy Tech, we are so much closer now to providing almost free college for almost all Ivy Tech students. We're so much closer to that than we've ever been through just a variety of different initiatives and things that the college has. So our department is really in sync with that. We have been trained and we know about a lot of those things. We work really closely with financial aid to assist students even when they might not qualify. So don't be afraid to refer.
For the completion grants, I think it is also important to highlight that it is a 1-semester grant. So that's important to know. It's not an ongoing source of funding for students.
Also important to note is that it would cover tuition and fees, and of course any previous debt to the college, but it will not cover books. That's an important point as well to remember.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. If I'm a community member, is there any way I could get involved?
I certainly encourage community members to volunteer to be one of our mentors. The thing with the mentorship program is it's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door, supporting students, learning a little bit about the various kind of decision points that students have along the way. With the platform that we use, Caitlin mentioned Signalvine as a pretty innovative platform for higher education. We can monitor a lot of conversations and provide direct support to the mentors to help them provide good advice and feedback to students. But one of the best ways to get engaged as a community member is to volunteer 1 hour a month of your time to become a mentor with us. And that's we have a pretty diverse group of people that have engaged as mentors who've really liked it. We don't do as much of the one-on-one in-person mentorship as some other programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters and Starfish that are great. But we really try to take a slightly different approach that could be scaled up, that could be text message based, that is really what research shows is one of the best ways to get messages across to students these days is through a text message. And it has been, to our surprise in some ways, with this pandemic, a really useful tool as we do social distancing to effectively work with students. I give Caitlin a lot of credit for her innovative use of Signalvine to reach out to her students she works with at Ivy Tech. But the a great way for community to get engaged would be to volunteer to be a mentor. There's also a spot on our website, indyachieves.org, where you can make a donation to our efforts, which are always appreciated and used to benefit our students. So thank you.
Excellent. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to spend a few minutes just talking about the community and education partnership aspect of Indy Achieves, because hopefully some of the people who are listening to this episode are thinking about trying to do this in their own community. And so in episode 81, we talked a little bit about the Shelby Advantage Partnership, which includes some good aspects that communities might want to consider. But I'd just like to know, what lessons would you share with other communities that are interested in solving the skills gap challenge in their area?
I think one of the biggest lessons I would say is meet the students where they're at. If we know that students are not using their email as often as they should, but they are responding to text messages, then if there is a way that we can meet them where they're at and send those texts to them, then that's one thing we can do to hopefully improve their education experience and improve their knowledge base of deadlines, requirements, etc.
From a partnership standpoint, one thing that I would add is that if you are looking to develop a partnership that includes multiple entities, it's important to have good communication from the get-go and set the parameters for the program, make sure everybody is on the same page to ensure a smooth process for the students.
As a matter of kind of building community support for such a program, I would say understand what your community workforce needs are. I think a lot of people are very surprised to know how many jobs require at least some form of post-secondary education. And if you want to go into welding or manufacturing, the jobs that are available today, you might be surprised how many of them in those industries actually require a certificate, an associate's degree, even to get your foot in the door. So I think that is something to really understand, that the role that Ivy Tech in particular plays throughout the state at providing a well-trained, qualified workforce for your area employers is really important. And I think sometimes really underestimated, in the sense that jobs that traditionally may not have required a post-secondary degree or credential now do, because of the way technology has shifted, because of the way the industry has changed. And so, I would say start by understanding what your needs are as a community, what your workforce needs are, and start talking to those employers and getting them engaged, because it's amazing how much of a need there is for students to get these high quality degrees and credentials and get into the workforce. And building out that support amongst your employer community and making the case for why this is important, I think is a good place to start. When we make the case for Indy Achieves, we start with saying, the needs of employers today are quite different than they were years ago. And we have to have an approach that includes post-secondary education. We have to have an approach that supports students to get through post-secondary education and get those degrees and credentials so that they can support the economy that exists in your community.
All right. Well, as regular listeners know, we end every episode with a call to action. So if you live in the Indianapolis area, consider how you can get involved with Indy Achieves. We discussed several opportunities for engagement today, and I'll summarize those in our show notes. I'm going to leave you with the Indy Achieves website, which you can visit, which has information and summarizes much of the information we heard here today. It's www.indyachieves.org. That's www.indyachieves.org. If you live outside of the Indianapolis area, think about how your community could come together to solve skill gap and equity concerns collaboratively. It's a good problem to solve, and I can guarantee no matter where you live in the country, your community college would be happy to be involved in that conversation. I want to thank my guests for joining today's panel. They were wonderful. It was a great conversation. Thank you to all of you. Matt Impink, Caitlin Diehl, Scott Rafalski, Elizabeth Swisher-Flood, and Jessica Solow, thank you again to all of you. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at K&M Tweets. Our producer for today's episode is Jenny Leonard. Jenny suggested a couple of episodes to the Our College Your Voices team via our email address and then helped us frame those out. Thanks to Jenny for her help. And you too can help produce an episode. Reach out to us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. It's a great way to be on the show if you're interested or just to help develop a future episode. Leave us a voicemail at 317-572-5049. And don't forget, if you're an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. Our website is www.ivytech.edu/podcast. Production assistance is provided by Becky Campbell, Sarah Ferguson, and the Ivy Tech Community College marketing team. And our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music and post-production services provided by the incredibly talented Jen Eads at the Brassy Broadcasting Company. And we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.